Genetic engineering has transformed our understanding of life, leading to incredible advancements while also raising significant ethical concerns. Human genetics, in particular, has revealed both fascinating and tragic stories. Throughout history, genetic isolation has led to remarkable yet sometimes devastating consequences. Some of the most striking examples include the blue-skinned Fugates of Kentucky, whose unusual appearance was caused by a rare genetic condition, and the Habsburg dynasty, whose strict royal inbreeding resulted in severe physical deformities and health problems. Inbreeding has not been confined to one social class or era. It has affected people across different time periods and backgrounds, from the rulers of ancient Egypt to small, isolated communities in modern times. One of the most well-documented cases of extreme inbreeding occurred in the Habsburg royal family, particularly with Charles II of Spain. Born in 1661, Charles was the product of generations of close relative marriages. His parents were uncle and niece, meaning that his genetic makeup was severely compromised. As a result, Charles suffered from numerous physical and mental disabilities throughout his life. He inherited the infamous Habsburg jaw, a severe underbite that made it difficult for him to chew or speak properly. Additionally, he had developmental delays, epilepsy, and early-onset baldness, which set him apart from other men of his age. His health was so fragile that doctors were astounded by what they discovered after his death. His heart was abnormally small, his internal organs were badly damaged, and his body displayed signs of extreme genetic deterioration. Perhaps the most bizarre revelation was that he had only one testicle, which was blackened. Due to his poor health, Charles was unable to father children, leading to the collapse of the Spanish Habsburg dynasty. His tragic life serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of excessive inbreeding in an attempt to preserve royal bloodlines. Another well-known case of royal inbreeding involved King Tut, the famous Egyptian pharaoh. Recent studies of his remains have provided insight into the severe health problems he faced during his short life. King Tut suffered from a club foot, scoliosis, and a cleft palate, all of which made daily life difficult. His condition was so severe that he required the use of multiple walking canes, and his left foot was deteriorating due to a degenerative disease. DNA analysis has revealed that his parents were siblings, a common practice among Egyptian royalty at the time. Marrying close relatives was seen as a way to preserve the royal lineage, but it led to serious genetic mutations. King Tut's already fragile health was further compromised by an active case of malaria, which likely contributed to his early death at the age of 19. While some theories once suggested that he died in a chariot accident, modern research indicates that his poor health and genetic disorders played a significant role in his demise. Genetic isolation has also led to devastating consequences in small, tight-knit communities. One of the most tragic examples can be found in the town of Short Creek, located on the border of Utah and Arizona. This community, which practiced polygamy and intermarriage among relatives, became a breeding ground for rare genetic disorders. In the 1990s, pediatric neurologist Theodore Tarbey discovered an alarming pattern among the children of Short Creek. Many suffered from severe developmental delays, strange facial features, and an extremely rare disorder called fumarase deficiency. This condition, which is inherited when both parents carry a faulty gene, causes severe neurological impairment. Affected children experience seizures, difficulty with movement, and cognitive disabilities, often requiring full-time care. The problem was made worse by the fact that nearly all of the town's residents were descended from just two families, the Jessops and the Barlows. Over time, continuous intermarriage within this small gene pool caused genetic disorders to spread rapidly. While this situation has had devastating consequences for many individuals, it has also provided valuable opportunities for genetic researchers, who have used these cases to better understand certain rare conditions. One of the most disturbing cases of inbreeding and genetic isolation was uncovered in 2012 in rural Australia. The Colt family, who lived in extreme seclusion, was discovered to have engaged in generations of inbreeding, leading to severe physical and mental disabilities among their children. The family had moved between remote areas of Australia to avoid detection, and by the time authorities discovered them, the damage was already extensive. The children of the Colt family suffered from severe malnutrition, speech impairments, and physical disabilities. Many were unable to communicate properly or care for themselves. Investigators found that the family lived in appalling conditions, with no access to proper hygiene or education. DNA testing confirmed that many of the children had been born from relationships between close relatives, sometimes even between siblings or parents and children. The Colt family's story is one of the most extreme cases of inbreeding ever recorded, showing the devastating effects of genetic isolation and neglect. A particularly unusual case of inbreeding resulted in the blue-skinned Fugates of Kentucky. This family, whose members displayed a striking blue tint to their skin, suffered from a rare blood disorder known as methemoglobinemia. This condition affects the body's ability to carry oxygen, giving the skin a bluish hue. The Fugates lived in an isolated Appalachian region where travel was difficult, and over time, they married within their own small community. As a result, the rare gene responsible for their blue skin was passed down through multiple generations. The condition also caused symptoms such as fatigue and developmental delays, but for most affected individuals, the blue skin was the most noticeable trait. Over time, as transportation improved and the family began to marry outside of their small community, cases of blue skin became less common. Today, the condition can be treated with a simple pill of methylene blue, which restores normal oxygen levels in the blood and eliminates the blue appearance within minutes. Looking further back into human history, genetic evidence has shown that inbreeding was common among Neanderthals. Fossilized remains from 50,000 years ago have revealed that some Neanderthals were the offspring of closely related parents, including half-siblings. This was likely due to the small, isolated groups in which Neanderthals lived. Unlike modern humans, who had larger and more diverse populations, Neanderthals had fewer options for mates, leading to a high level of inbreeding. This genetic isolation may have contributed to their eventual extinction, as it made their populations more vulnerable to disease and environmental changes. Another striking example of inbreeding comes from the Kingston clan, a polygamous sect in Utah. This group has long encouraged marriages between close relatives in an attempt to maintain a pure bloodline. Over the years, the Kingston clan has become notorious for its secretive and tightly controlled community. Reports indicate that many members suffer from genetic disorders, including vision problems, unusually small heads, and developmental delays. While polygamy itself is no longer considered a criminal offense in Utah, forced and underage marriages remain illegal. The Kingston clan's strict control over its members has made it difficult for researchers to fully study the effects of inbreeding within their community. The story of royal inbreeding in Europe reached another extreme with Emperor Ferdinand I of Austria. Born in 1793, Ferdinand was the product of multiple generations of inbreeding, which left him with severe health problems. His most noticeable condition was hydrocephalus, which caused his head to grow abnormally large due to fluid buildup around the brain. He also suffered from frequent seizures and developmental delays. Despite these challenges, Ferdinand ruled as emperor for many years before eventually abdicating the throne. His story highlights the dangers of prioritizing royal lineage over genetic health. One of the most infamous cases of genetic disorders in European royalty was the spread of hemophilia, a deadly blood disorder that prevents blood from clotting properly. This condition was passed down through the descendants of Queen Victoria of England. Known as the royal disease, hemophilia affected many of Europe's ruling families, including the Russian Romanovs. The heir to the Russian throne, Tsarevich Alexei, suffered from hemophilia, and his condition was kept secret from the public. His mother, Tsarina Alexandra, turned to the mystic Rasputin for help, believing that he had healing powers. Rasputin's influence over the royal family contributed to growing public distrust and played a role in the eventual downfall of the Romanovs. The Russian Revolution led to the brutal execution of the entire royal family in 1918, marking the tragic end of one of the most powerful dynasties in history. These stories, whether from royal families or isolated communities, reveal the profound impact of genetic isolation. While inbreeding has sometimes been practiced to maintain power or tradition, it has often resulted in severe health consequences. Understanding these historical cases provides valuable lessons for genetics and human health today. King George III of England is often remembered as the Mad King, but his mental struggles might have been caused by more than just madness. He experienced sudden outbursts, paranoia, and confusion, which many historians believed were signs of mental illness. However, in the 1960s, a new theory suggested that his condition could have been the result of a rare genetic disease passed down through the royal family for generations. This disease, known as porphyria, affects the body's ability to produce heme, a crucial component of blood. Without enough heme, toxic substances build up in the body, leading to severe and unusual symptoms. These include reddish-brown urine, intense abdominal and chest pain, and mental disturbances like anxiety, hallucinations, and paranoia. The symptoms are so extreme that they almost seem like something from a horror story. In 1966, researchers Ida McAlpine and Richard Hunter proposed that King George III's condition was actually due to a specific form of porphyria called variegate porphyria. This theory gained popularity, and today, many believe it to be true. But George III wasn't the only royal who may have suffered from this disorder. His great-great-grandmother, Mary, Queen of Scots, reportedly had similar episodes of mental distress and severe pain. Her son, James I of England, was said to have had urine the colour of dark wine, a possible symptom of porphyria. The pattern continued through later generations, with many members of the royal family displaying similar symptoms. In 1966, genetic testing confirmed that George III's descendants, Princess Charlotte of Prussia and her daughter Princess Feodora, had porphyria. Sadly, Feodora took her own life in 1945. Then, in 1968, another royal, Prince William of Gloucester, was diagnosed with the disease. So, was King George III truly insane, or was he simply suffering from an inherited disorder that plagued his family for centuries? The truth is far more complex than it seems. Another royal family with a dark genetic history was the Ptolemies of Egypt. For nearly 300 years, this dynasty maintained power through a shocking tradition, marrying within their own family. Siblings, cousins, uncles, and nieces all wed each other to keep the royal bloodline pure. Even Cleopatra VII, the famous Queen of Egypt, was a product of this practice. Her father, Ptolemy XII, is believed to have married his own sister, Cleopatra V, which means Cleopatra herself likely had incestuous roots. Why did the Ptolemies do this? The reason was simple: power. By marrying within the family, they ensured that no outsider could claim the throne. However, this came at a terrible cost. The more closely related people are, the higher the chances of passing on harmful genetic disorders. The Ptolemies suffered from various physical and mental issues as a result of inbreeding. One of the most well-known examples was Ptolemy VIII, who was so bloated and deformed that he was mocked by the people of Alexandria and given the nickname Potbelly. Many rulers in the dynasty also showed signs of intellectual disabilities, physical deformities, and violent behavior. Cleopatra's own siblings mysteriously died under suspicious circumstances, possibly due to the dynasty's dark legacy of inbreeding. As the generations passed, the Ptolemies' marriages became even more disturbing. Ptolemy IX married two of his sisters in succession. Ptolemy XII, Cleopatra's father, married his niece. One ruler even killed his own son and sent his dismembered body to his wife as a birthday gift. Despite the severe risks, inbreeding allowed the Ptolemies to maintain their rule for nearly 3 centuries. However, it also led to a dynasty plagued by genetic defects, violent betrayals, and eventual downfall. The consequences of inbreeding are not just seen in ancient history, they still exist today. One of the most shocking examples is the Whitaker family from West Virginia, known as America's most inbred family. Their tragic story reveals what happens when close relatives continue to marry within the same bloodline for generations. It all began with twin brothers, Henry and John Whitaker. Their children, instead of marrying outside the family, married each other. This cycle of inbreeding continued for years, leading to serious physical and mental disabilities. John Whitaker had 9 children with his first cousin, while Henry had 7 children with his wife, Sally. The situation became even worse when John's son, John Emery Whitaker, married his own double cousin, Gracie Irene Whitaker. Together, they had 15 children. As a result of continuous inbreeding, the Whitaker family developed severe genetic defects. Many of them cannot speak properly and only communicate through grunts and strange sounds. Some struggle with memory loss and can't even recognize their own family members. Sadly, they didn't understand that inbreeding was the cause of their suffering until much later. One of the most well-known members of the family, Betty Whitaker, was born in 1952. She took on the responsibility of caring for her siblings and promised her mother she would never marry. Along with her brother Ray and sister Lorraine, Betty lives in a small, run-down home in Odd, West Virginia. Despite their challenges, the siblings understand each other, even if they can't communicate like most people. Photographer Mark Leiter first documented the Whitakers in 2004, and what he witnessed was shocking. He described their home as something out of a horror film, with family members wandering around aimlessly, their eyes pointing in different directions, and making animal-like sounds. However, instead of just observing, Mark took it upon himself to help them. Through donations, the Whitakers received financial support to improve their living conditions, fix their home, and buy a truck. Their story is both tragic and eye-opening. It highlights the devastating effects of inbreeding and poverty. While their circumstances may seem unbelievable, their struggles are very real.